one of the things we're tackling here is what we got told a lot by procurement professionals when the SPP started was, my boss won't let me look at sustainable procurement, or we're too focused on cost, or where do I start, or am I going to be able to do this? Where do I go for the tools and the knowledge? A lot of young procurement professionals coming in saying, I want to transform this, I want to do this, look at this with a new lens. So there's lots happening, there's lots going on, but we really want to tackle how sustainable procurement leadership can actually drive that change today. So can I ask you to introduce yourselves? And let's do ladies first. Martha, would you mind going first?
Thank you, Oliver. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Martha Buffington. I'm Chief Procurement Officer of SC Johnson, a consumer products company in the United States. And I've been passionate about sustainability for over 20 years in my roles in procurement at the Coca-Cola Company and at BSM, a company based out of Europe that's also very involved with sustainability. So thanks for having me.
You're welcome, you're welcome. And Lisa.
Yes, good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone. I'm joining you this morning from sunny New Jersey in the US, and I often spend most of my time in London. I'm the CPO and also head of real estate and facilities for GlaxoSmithKline, otherwise known as GSK. And I'm super excited to be here with you this morning. I was watching everybody join from around the world, and so it's really a truly global cause. And I'm very excited to learn from my other panelists, as well as to field many of the questions that you have. So welcome.
Excellent. Thanks, Lisa. And two people you may have heard from before. Thomas.
Yeah, so hi, everybody, and thanks for everybody to join. It's amazing, 267. So chuffed that you are all here. So I'm Thomas. My day job, I'm the CPO of Bayer. But in the evening and sometimes at the nighttime, I work with this amazing group of SPP ambassadors who is just not prepared to not drive for a sustainable procurement. So a real pleasure to work with the team. And I am handing over to Bertrand, who is my co-founder of SPP, and who is also becoming, I don't know, almost like a family member. We seem to be chit-chatting every day. So it's nice. Bertrand, what have you got to share?
Yeah. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. So you are now, you know, my buddy, 24/7 relationship since 2 years, so I am the CPO of Henkel, as also the president of Henkel Global Supply Chain, and in my evening also very much involved. First, I'm leading also the Together for Sustainability organization. So this is also something which is also very strongly connected also with SPP and our companies. And then SPP since now 2 years, following a conversation on a Saturday morning with Thomas and the rest, you know. And I'm back to you, Oliver, and very happy to be with Martha, Lisa, and you, Thomas.
Excellent, excellent. It's great to have you. So bearing in mind that the audience listening in, again, I'm going to generalize here, really do want to understand how they can drive transformation in their organization, whether they're a procurement leader or they need to talk to their procurement leader. So one of the big questions is how you actually articulate the value of sustainable procurement. It's one of the first sessions we actually kicked off today, was talking about how do you do that and how do you go beyond costs. So Lisa, I might start with you if you don't mind. How would you go about thinking about articulating the value of sustainable procurement?
Well, thank you, Oliver. Happy to field the question. So look, sustainability, the reputation and the credibility that could come with that is something that resonates with all shareholders, with all stakeholders, whether it's your colleagues, whether it's your board, or most importantly, your customers, in our case, patients and consumers. And it also brings value to the bottom line. I often think that when you first get into this, you always think that it means that something is going to be more expensive, which obviously is not what procurement is here to do. It's here to create overall holistic value. But I think some specific examples are avoiding waste, avoiding consumption, which we are good at doing that. We are very good at, as procurement has matured throughout the decades, as you go up the value creation curve, you have to look at things like demand and specifications. And so for me, this is just a situation of maturity. It's another huge opportunity that we have as procurement professionals to bring more value to the corporation.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. This is about the profession and profit and people and planet. It's all connected. Martha, anything to add to that as well?
Yes, thanks. So I totally agree with Lisa. And to build on that, I think the value we bring is, magnifying what we're trying to do as a company. So we have, sustainability built into our business strategies, nonetheless, but one company can only make so big a difference. And so if you expand those values throughout your supply chain and you expect your suppliers and help your suppliers to improve their sustainability, then you can magnify your business impact.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you. And Thomas and Bertrand, this has been obviously a question that has burnt heavily over the last couple of years about how we articulate the value. And as I said, for those that get it, do it. And for others that need to come along, how do we approach this question, do you think, guys?
Thomas.
Yeah, so I think maybe first of all, I think what is really great to see is that there is not a single sort of CPO roundtable these days that is taking place without sustainability being the center of the conversation. And I think with this also there is a broad understanding that it's no longer a nice to have. It's actually a prerequisite for an operation. And exactly as Lisa was saying, there is this thing about, oh, it's going to cost us money, etc. But even with climate change overall, there is a parallel to be drawn, because whatever you pay now is going to be a fraction of what you will be paying at a future point if you are not getting yourself ready. So the changes we saw in the 80s and the 90s around quality or safety, there is a parallel to be drawn that, it's just how business needs to happen. And if you are not going to do that, chances are pretty good that you won't be around in a decade from now, right? So don't get caught in the timeline of quarterly reporting. This is a change program for 1 million procurement practitioners. And, it's so nice to see so many of you, because you are obviously part of the journey, and that's what we want to do. We want to change how business is conducted.
And building on what you just said, it's people, planet, prosperity. So it is in our hands. It is in our hands, and this is through collaboration. Collaboration in our organizations. It is not the fact of procurement, it is the organization building it, very pioneering in many respects. But at the same time, it is the impact of collaboration across organizations through it. And a very, very strong opportunity to learn leadership, responsible leadership, to stand up and to make it a business case at the same time. So that's why planet, people, and prosperity. And to go through the long run, nothing better than teams like the ones we have today, pulling the efforts together and the passion to make it.
Excellent. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. And Martha, we'll hopefully have you back, because you've got incredibly important things to say, and I don't want to have you muffled if you're not muffled. So we'll wait for you. Don't worry at all. So perhaps we'll come on to the next question, and really it's about how does procurement shape its future and the future of business. So I think it's safe to say that procurement is never sexier than ever. It is on the front pages of news. Procurement is being thrust into the front line on absolutely everything, which is absolutely as it should be, frankly. I think it's very important that procurement gets the respect for the skills that you've got and everything else. So how does procurement shape the future of business and collaboration? What can procurement leaders and procurement professionals do to grasp this opportunity even more? Let's come to Lisa again.
Thanks, Oliver. I mean, I find what's really exciting about the whole area of sustainability, which is a little bit different, though I completely agree with Thomas around, in the 80s and 90s, how we were focused about safety, quality. The difference here is we must collaborate. Not only do we need to collaborate in our companies, it's a very multifunctional work. However, the opportunity here is really to democratize sustainability and work across sectors and across multiple industry sectors to both learn from one another and to work together. This is one area where collaboration is honestly more important than competition. Because if we all work together and learn from each other, we'll just get there faster. And I think at COP26,
yeah,
it was
last
a
week
big
we kicked off.
issue.
We had a 2-hour meeting.
Hold on one
Marcos,
second.
you were there. We didn't finish
Somebody
last.
went off mute, huh?
That's all right. Thomas is someone who likes to often join in on meetings, but has done it inadvertently this time. So never mind. He's got a very important meeting.
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah, there he is again. I'll mute him again.
You'll take
carry
it.
on, Lisa.
So,
apologies.
yes, I think that there are some programs that we did announce at COP26, which I just want to highlight here because everybody's welcome to look into them. One was a program called Energize, which 10 companies are collaborating to move 1,000 of our combined supply base onto more renewable energy sources. So there's lots of ways that people can plug in to take a leadership position inside your company without lifting that boat everywhere, you know? So I think that is the really, really fun, different part about sustainability is that, you know, rivals can work together. You can work across industry sectors. We all share many suppliers in common. And the more we all help each other, to Martha's point, most companies have now embedded some pretty aggressive targets into their strategic business plans. And by working together, we can all get there faster.
Absolutely. And just to absolutely emphasize Energize, I think Energize is an example of CPOs and indeed yourself and others grasping this, actually making it happen, because collaboration can be quite stodgy sometimes, and maybe in pharmaceuticals, perhaps more than those, but you really made it happen and actually got it going, which I think it shows the power of CPOs and procurement leaders taking ownership of this. Bertrand, your thoughts, how can procurement really capture this opportunity?
Well, I think there is one element beyond transparency and compliance we were all involved the last 10 years, which fascinates me at that stage the most, which is innovation. It is to create a new through sustainability. And this is coming through extremely strong collaboration with top suppliers. Suppliers embedded already in the organization, but new suppliers and ecosystems. And I think this is just a reinventing not only the chemistry, not only the product itself, but also the claims. And this is one part which is currently giving me a lot of positiveness, if I may say, and optimism into the future that we have in our hands, that we can make it. Despite all the scalability of issues and challenges we can have ahead of us, because it is very complex. Innovation, Oliver, innovation is the spice that we can very much enhance together with our suppliers and vice versa.
Yeah, agreed. Thomas?
Yeah, I think beyond that, because I agree with everything that's been said, I think also we need to make sure we have the right vocabulary. And I had an amazing boss once, and he said, you know, Thomas, you are your conversation. And if we are not into the topic, if we are not capable of really explaining why is it a good idea to focus people, planet, profit, you know, the impact we will have will be quite limited. So there's a bit of self-reflection necessary, a mirror in front of us and say, do we really understand the real consequence of our supply chain? And where do we focus? Because it's so complex that we can also get swamped by the ocean of complexity out there, that we need to be able to say, we understand this is the scope, but for what I'm responsible for, I'm going to focus on this and this and this, and here's why. I think if we can have these type of conversations, we can also drive progress. So there's a bit of self-education necessary for all of us.
Martha, I can hear you absolutely fine. You're a bit crackly, but everyone can put up with it if it's crackly. You go for it.
Thanks. Is it any better this time?
It's
I've
okay.
reconnected. It's so odd. I don't know. So says Bertrand. Well, I think we should also look at our talent, right? If we want to really make an impact as procurement in the field of sustainability, people really have to get educated about it. Like Thomas said, internal education is important because sustainability is rather a complicated topic. There's so many different angles to it. There's environmental and social and economic. These things are complicated. How we measure it is complicated. How we track it and how we're sure we're making an impact. It's complicated. There are different ways to impact it along the value chain, that you really have to understand some of the levers back in the value chain you may not have learned about before. So I think that educating our own people with groups like SPP is really important, and that'll really help magnify our impact as well.
Absolutely. And don't worry, I can hear you just fine. And don't worry about anyone else that's hearing, because I can hear you fine. Some people are perfectionists. They want to hear everything loud and clear, but that makes people listen more, if anything. Great points, team. And I also think that's some really good points there, because it is time for the profession, I think, to really grasp the opportunity, I think, more than ever before. So I think that's really, really, really good. I just want to take on another question. We will get to some questions in the chat as well. So guys, I want to see lots of questions in the chat, because there's a rare opportunity to really quiz these guys here. And I want to see hands up in reactions as well. There's plenty of time for questions. But one of the most popular sessions of World Sustainable Procurement Day was earlier. In fact, it was the second most popular. It was all about how procurement and finance work together to really, as a collaboration internally. So I think this is an opportunity for procurement to collaborate internally, isn't it? We touched upon this question a little bit, but who do procurement need to collaborate with, and how do you start to grab these people and actually make stuff happen? So any examples from your experience? And Bertrand, maybe we'll come to you first.
Well, building on what I just said, first, before finance, at that stage, business and internally, we pick up this. We pick up this to go very much in depth. But not only business, it is at that stage, you have also your sustainability colleagues, because to understand it in depth, what are we talking about? What do we want to achieve? And how do we embed this into the strategy of the company, in the purpose of the company? And then from there, deriving into the different business units as also to the product and then to the customer. So that's a journey. It is not only the sake of sustainability for sustainability. It needs to be deeply embedded in the roots of the company, in the values, in the purpose, and to see that into a journey, 5 to 10 years. And from there, to derive it into specifics that the company has as ambition to reach and to achieve, and challenging each other to say, is it enough? Is it good enough? So this is Oliver, to first start answering to your question, the ability to build up the frame and then to embed it in the respective organization of procurement, to be able to engage respectively in business and in research, and with also the regulations, and step by step, not making it a monster, but a program moving forward onto which everybody can learn successively, as also just Martha said.
Absolutely.
Oliver, maybe I can build on that and just share our framework of how we went about this. So there's multiple groups that are involved, and to both Martha and Bertrand's point, you need some level of expertise. So we have a center, I would say like a center of excellence in sustainability, with some deep subject matter experts that actually sit in the center of the organization. Then within procurement, I created my own center of excellence, folks, just a handful of folks who honestly work with people like yourselves and the other advocacy organizations, and they're creating the framework to embed all of this with our category people. Because really, to make this a much more mature function, we need to educate and have this embedded in our actual category strategies. That's the way we do everything, right? To make sure that we're driving continuous improvement and we're measuring our progress against the specific targets that your company or my company have now created. But it is a journey. I think if you didn't have the ability to have some subject matter expertise, and if not in different size companies, if you're in a very small company, you could go and seek that externally. But in a very large multinational company, for us, it made sense to have both a center COE and our own center and our own COE. And then we've created a very senior level governance committee that meets on a quarterly basis, from representatives from all parts of the company, from Bertrand's point, from R&D to manufacturing to commercial, all aspects. And they meet on a quarterly basis to monitor and drive the progress. So that's how that ecosystem internally comes together. Externally, to Martha's point, if you talk very broadly, you have lots of different groups in the mix, but that's how we've managed it internally. And it's working quite well so far.
Excellent, excellent. You could argue too many groups externally, and navigating all of that noise can be too difficult. And that's one thing the SPP tries to do, is navigate all that noise. So I know you feel that more than most, Lisa, given that you put your brand and your neck out there to tackle this. So Martha, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that, it's kind of a chicken or the egg kind of problem. So is it procurement that drives this through the value chain? So we find sustainable sources of materials that then R&D can embed into products, manufacturing product, and then commercial can sell it. So that's more of a push from procurement, or the reverse happens. So customers demand it, and commercial folks, then demand it of the R&D people, and they have to come look for supply sources that are more sustainable, and then it can get embedded in the product. So I think either way you come at it, it works. Do it the way that works for your company. But I think that it's either a push or a pull from customers or suppliers and procurement. Either way works, but in the end, you'll end up with more sustainable products. And that's how the cross-functional collaboration happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Thomas?
I mean, seriously, it's not easy to follow these three with any sort of insightful comment, right?
I'm sure
you are at the end.
I'm sure.
All right. So, but the only thing that I can see that's sort of left is that I think, why is procurement such a great position to do this? Because I think any successful procurement professional is a natural collaborator. And we are able to start looking at what are the demands that we have internally, talking to a whole bunch of people, and how do you match that with what is happening on the outside. So the fact that we are in this position helping to shape a better future is appropriate, and we are probably the best people qualified for that particular task. And so that gives me really great hope. So great function. Keep doing what you're doing.
Excellent, excellent. Now, we have half an hour, but we've got loads of questions. So are you guys happy to take questions now? Should we just dive into it? We've got probably an hour's worth of questions in there, so we'll try and keep it really punchy. So don't feel like you all need to answer, but you can put your hands up, either virtual or physically, if you want to answer these. So in no particular order, I really like the question, actually, that if I saw correctly, I think Zara had asked, how does sustainable procurement governance work in your organizations? Do you have specialist roles focused entirely on sustainability, or is it part of everyone's role? So who wants to pick that one up?
I can quickly pick up on it if you wish. We have a team dedicated to sustainability, and then embedding it into the organization. But we are not working this in isolation. For example, as we talk, I should be in our worldwide sustainability council with the entire organization, spending every month 3-4 hours together. Tomorrow, we have the same group, but focusing on supply chain from plan, source, make, and deliver. And then this is the way to define it, and then to embed it then into the respective organizations and into the day-to-day business of our people in procurement.
I can say we have exactly the same, and I think that's probably a model that many of have. A corporate entity, procurement is part of that. What's the strategy? Deforestation, human rights, water, etc. We are participating then within procurement, a COE that is both governing but also enabling to make sure everybody knows that what is required. And then the operational accountability sits with our category teams, with our supplier teams, with everybody who is out there talking to suppliers, and that is then embedded through processes, hardwired into the contracting, scopes of works, etc. I think that's how most large organizations are set up, and it works. It's a journey, but it works.
Excellent. Lisa, Martha, anything to add? Martha, you've just joined SC Johnson, of course, so you're probably just getting an understanding of how it's working there. But Lisa, you've got good people like Lewis Howard and others in the team. But how do you approach it, Lisa?
Yeah, I really don't have much to add from Thomas. Like, we have the same situation where we have that center COE that are more deep subject matter experts in water or energy, on an operational perspective. Then I have a small COE, and then we have the different category teams picking it up. And then at the corporate level, we've got this very senior level council that meets quarterly to prioritize, drive engagement, look at how we're doing against the KPIs, and those KPIs are now embedded in our annual report. So we just issued our annual report a few weeks ago. You know, the targets are in there, and our progress against those are there. So that's how we will work that.
Excellent.
Really great. It's exactly the same.
Oliver, if I can build also further into that question, there is one challenge that we have, I think all, is to be too internally focused. So it is super important to have very big ears and big eyes to listen and to participate to other groups, to benchmark, to reflect, because as Martha said, it is a very, very complex topic. And also to have the courage and the humility to engage with strategic relationship, to go in depth, and then also from there to build from an external point of view, either with suppliers or with associations.
Absolutely. What we need to avoid is procurement throwing things over the door to sustainability to pick up, and that being the automatic decision, isn't it? It needs to become more embedded. I completely agree with that. Interesting question from Khalid about what do organizations do on sustainable procurement if they don't really have a procurement function? Actually, we get a lot of that from the beginners, if you like. And I want to maybe expand that question slightly and say, how do you support perhaps suppliers who don't necessarily have a well-established procurement function to think about sustainable procurement? Because it's not good enough to just have your own organization. We need to spread it down the chain. So how do you help companies, or how do companies go about it if they're too small or I don't have the luxury of having the function that you have? What would be your advice to them?
I think, Oliver, what I would do is create your own external ecosystem, and depends upon what your core business is. If you are a manufacturer of something, you have a supply chain or you have a manufacturing unit, I would then tap into those subject matter experts to help. But obviously, if you don't have that capability of building something internally, there's plenty of subject matter expertise that's emerging, like Sustainable Procurement Pledge, right? Like many organizations. So then you would have to create the bridge to the outside world to bring that in. I do think that really, in order to drive a program with targets, even if it's not procurement, you need, nothing will get done if something's not measured. So I do think somebody in the organization, whether it's supply chain, manufacturing, finance, somebody's going to have to own that mantle and help drive it, even if it isn't in procurement. Though I think that would be quite tough, because I'm sure all of us on the call understand that scope 3, all of our supply chain work, is where the complexity lies. It's clearer what you need to do within your own 4 walls, physically or virtually. But when you start to go into your supply chains, that's where the complexity comes. So somebody's going to have to take some accountability for that to drive a program.
And maybe if I can just add, because I think the situation described is exactly what is happening increasingly in many, organizations. EcoVadis has their annual survey of how well is industry doing, 65,000 companies, and whilst lots of progress is happening on environmental, social, ethical dimensions, the only category that has consistently declined the last 5 years is actually sustainable procurement. So I think that scenario really, really exists. I don't think it can or will continue, simply because the world recognizes there is a need for action. And we see that the legislative framework in many geographies is also tightening up. We've seen in Germany, there's a Lieferkettengesetz, EU, all American companies are following it. So it's really hard to imagine that those expectations are not being hardwired into your internal process. And that means you need to have a procurement team. You need to have an opinion. You need to have policies and abilities of practices as well. So it's a reality, but I don't think you will be able to fly long if we don't address that.
But this is also probably why we have also been at the origin of our conversations to build up SPP, to equip and empower. And small or large companies, it's not a matter of size. It is just a matter of being part of an ecosystem to do what has to be done. So there is a must to do, and there is eventually a nice to have. But let's focus on the must. Lisa, you just said scope 3, super complex. So that's the time to pull and to associate each other, because alone, much too complex. But everybody must have the chance to participate and has, to some extent, a duty to participate, because also regulations are coming. So that's a must at a certain point of time to have that opportunity to manage the agenda.
Yeah, absolutely. Martha, anything to add?
Just all great points as to why we company doesn't have a procurement organization. Probably start there first. Still can't hear me.
Not too well, no, Martha. It's probably got worse. But that's a shame. That's a shame. Don't worry about it.
What's the matter? I've tried everything.
Oh, no, that's better.
Try without. Okay.
Get rid of the head. Who needs Apple anyway? Get rid of
Anyway, I mean, you've got to have a procurement organization to drive sustainability throughout your supply base. So if you don't have a procurement organization, start there, try to get more ownership over procurement. And then you can start with the basics like a supplier code of conduct or a audit assessment or something to try to at least get visibility to the sustainability of your supply base. And then you can layer on the more sophisticated things like actually drive change metrics. Yeah, it's a journey and just start at the beginning.
Yeah, it is a journey. It's a journey. I think no one's cracked this by any stretch of the imagination. Nina Baumann, good friend of the SPP, you make a good point that where in the SPP ecosystem could buyers with smaller companies and not having sustainability departments get that support? I think that's fundamentally what the SPP is about. I mean, yes, we've got some big companies involved like yourselves who support it, but you need your suppliers to be really good at sustainable procurement. So I think inevitably the SPP is going to be focused on helping those that need it most, who don't have the resources to hand, but it is indeed for everyone. So very good point there, Nina.
Maybe, Oliver, if I can just add, because I do think also we are launching, of course, all our chapters, and I see quite a few co-chairs also actually on the call here. Nice to see you all. But a lot of those conversations will also take place, can take place across our chapters, where you see within your industry or within your geography, this is how we approach it. And you would also have a chance to maybe look at how does other industries do that. So we see a lot of enablement happening also at our chapter level. And as our infrastructure gets launched, more of those discussions become possible. That's a bit the idea.
Absolutely. Loads of questions. So we're going to move even faster on the questions if we can. So the two words I hear most about procurement now is sustainability and collaboration, but the third one is inevitably digitization. So how can digitization help sustainable procurement? There's a massive question. Anyone want to pick that one up? Any good examples of where you're seeing technology actually help you?
I mean, how can it help?
Go on, Lisa.
Lisa, you first.
I'll tie it to another question I saw in the chat around to Thomas and myself regarding clinical trials and the footprint around R&D. I think the one thing that we would all agree upon, whether it's good or bad, is that the situation, the pandemic situation we've all lived through in the last 2 years accelerated digital. That's for sure, for the good and the bad. But I think the learnings from that in terms of how at least companies like myself and Thomas, how we can deliver solutions to our patients really accelerated. So things that we would typically deliver in a clinic setting, for example, we learned in a safe way how to do more of that virtually. Patient support programs, some aspects of clinical trials, some, if you had to go to a hospital setting, could not be replicated. So I think there's different parts of the digital journey. The data analytics piece obviously is a hot topic for all procurement professionals. And I think specifically in sustainability, at least from GSK's perspective, we probably spent our first year just really getting our arms around our baseline of our data. So in order to really understand how we were going to get where we wanted to go, we needed to understand where we were starting from. And so a lot of data analytics and the digital journey and the way that we've all been able to accelerate our toolkits in that area will help not only in sustainability, but also, quite frankly, in everything that we do, to make our folks, our own colleagues' lives maybe a little simpler because they're not spending as much time on non-value added tasks, but also to just accelerate our progress. I'm not sure that we've cracked it 100% with how the digitalization will help all aspects of sustainability because of the complexity that we've all been talking about, but it definitely can help you understand what your starting point is and help your company. When you haven't already set your targets, it's good to know where you're starting from so that you can create the roadmap.
Thank you, Lisa. And building on what you just said, I mean, it is obvious that, and we are on the journey, not having reached the end. Data, transparency, collaboration, access to business intelligence, reflecting, it's obvious. Giving also dashboards which can be put in place into our decision process of every day. We have behind us decades of decisions on cost, on quality, on services. We don't have one decade of decision on sustainability. We do not have the eventual understanding, but we do not have yet access to all the data we need. So that's a big element to capture, to offer dashboards and ability to take decisions in a full context.
And I would add that to gather data from all of our suppliers, that's a big burden on them. And to use these associations that are trying to pull data together and be sort of that clearinghouse and then share it confidentially with the right parties across the supply chain, that's important, right? Because each company can't go out and collect all of this on their own.
A great point. I think everyone would agree with that. I mean, there are a million different tools and platforms out there, and you could sit there and listen to demos and pitches all day about all of this sort of stuff. But I think there's a mindset shift needed in those people about thinking about how does that data get collaborated? How do those people start to work together? And I think you're right. We need to make suppliers' life more easily. I think one thing about digitization I saw recently is that the supplier experience when it comes to digitization is as important, if not more important, than lovely dashboards for buyers. And I think that's absolutely critical to sustainability, to allow them to be able to get stuff done. Again, want to move quickly on to other questions. An obvious question about rewards, financial, personal, linked to performance on sustainability. You, Thomas, spoke to Schneider Electric yesterday, where we heard that sustainability is baked into Schneider Electric's employees' performance, and procurement plays such a critical part in that bonus, doesn't it, by all accounts? So how do you do it? How do you guys do it? How are you thinking about doing it? And how do you think it needs to be done?
I mean, I can share, so in Bayer, exactly as Lisa is saying, we've got our integrated report that has all the financial as well as our sustainability or social dimensions. That's what we commit to investors, to society at large. And all the bonuses in our organization is dependent on both dimensions. So the board, our CEO, my bonus, everybody's bonus is dependent on whether we are delivering on our sustainability as well as the financial, and that's people, planet, profit in life in action. So I think we will see more and more companies moving down that avenue as well.
Excellent. Anyone else?
Same for us. We just this year will be the first year. 22 will be the first year where we've got a specific. We don't have individual, we don't get bonus on individual performance. It's all about the company performance. But in the company performance now, we have something specific around our broader sustainability goals, including I&D, inclusion and diversity. So that's included in there.
Excellent. Okay.
And very specifically, Oliver, will be made also for us very specifically into our team objectives. To mobilize the team on the concrete path that we want to reach in 2022.
Excellent. Excellent. Just want to jump to another question. There's someone asked, and I think it's a very important question, about whether you've got any examples to mind or any principles to mind in terms of collaborating with suppliers to come up with new ideas and innovations. So instead of it being a transactional relationship, surveys and data, are there any good examples of where you're working with your suppliers to actually invent or create or establish new sustainability projects, initiatives, alternatives? Any examples that you guys can think of?
Take that one. So at my prior company, we were very, very active in using renewable electricity and having a lot of success around the world in that field. And we did an analysis of our greenhouse gas footprint in scope 3 and found that a lot of our suppliers would really benefit from using renewable electricity to lower their footprints, but they didn't know how to go about doing it. And so we had many workshops around the world to help educate suppliers on how to source and use and measure renewable electricity, and then help educate them and put them in touch with people, other organizations, consultants, companies that can help them source renewable energy. So it was very well received, and sharing that expertise helped accelerate their transition.
Excellent. Lisa, you've experienced that as well, of course.
Yes, obviously we've been involved with the Energize program, which is one way, but honestly, for all of our tier one, we have a segmented supply base for our supplier relationship management program, and sustainability and all those aspects are included in all of our tier one supplier discussions, top to top. So, and it depends upon the supplier. I mean, honestly, you can learn a lot from all your suppliers. On the professional services side, for example, if you deal with any of the consulting companies, some of them are very, very active in the space. So, we have a plethora of tier one suppliers, ranging from some of our most critical manufacturing related suppliers. There we talk about, the natural carbon, water, depending upon what their scope is with us and for themselves. We're trying to not only learn from each other, but we want to have transparency where let's say they have a program, but their timelines are different than our goals. We're trying to uncover that early enough in the life cycle of those relationships, so we can then work together to say, okay, if their timeline is significantly later than us, are there pieces we can help them with, or through our connections, help them accelerate where it would make the biggest difference to us for scope 3. So that has started. We've been doing that now for about, I would say about 18 months with all the tier one suppliers.
Excellent. Anything to add, guys? Thomas, Bertrand?
I just want to go back to Bertrand's first point, because this is where it gets really, really interesting, right? I mean, sustainability is a catalyst for innovation as well. And I think a lot of even, product solutions in terms of what it is you bring to your market comes through these engagements with suppliers. And I think having supplier innovation sessions, making sure that you can communicate your needs and facilitate briefing sessions, I think that is where it gets really exciting. Having it embedded into your supplier relationship management methodology is a prerequisite, and it's a good place. But I think a lot of people will hopefully see that actually sustainability becomes now the catalyst for new products, new solutions, and I personally get, like Bertrand, super excited about that.
Yeah, and we call it even Sustainnovation, and that's the moment to really talk and to make it happen, and to define what do we call Sustainnovation. Is it a little bit less of packaging, a little bit less of this, or it is a footprint, and what do you mean by footprint? Is it and then so it opens a lot of questions. But what is great, it is in collaboration, and then it is focusing on the end customers, and then we need to distinguish between the CPG requirements and the B2B requirements. And on the journey, we can also engage into also some regulation understandings, reflections, and here you have also all these work with, for example, for us, the TFS organization, where we can engage a lot in it. So, and then, so strategic relationship and innovation with strategic suppliers, super, super important.
Yeah, and I guess answering some of the questions here about the importance of engaging with smaller or more diverse suppliers, presumably that's part of the innovation story as well. It forces you in many ways to talk to more innovative, smaller, nimble, agile suppliers, and it makes them more accessible to you and so on, I presume, as well. So yeah. I think that's another part of it. I'm really conscious of time, particularly because we've got literally another session straight after this, and we're all flying around, but this is really godless. There is loads of questions. Guys, I'm sure you wouldn't mind as a panel, maybe we pick up some of these questions perhaps in a sort of written way over the next month or so. I'm sure you wouldn't mind, and hopefully that means we can start to tackle some of this. But I'd like to sort of have all of you reflect on one question I saw, which is, if you're listening into this, you care about sustainability, you're in procurement, but most of those people listening and perhaps haven't got the support of their bosses or struggling to know where to start, what would be a specific suggestion or piece of advice for those people who are looking for that low-hanging fruit, that first thing to sort of cling on to or to capture the imagination of their leadership on? What would you recommend to those people who are trying to knock on doors like yours to inspire them? So who wants? Lisa.
Well, don't give up is my first thing, right? Like, number one, try. I mean, I think all of us who have been in procurement for a long time, I use the analogy of running into a big red brick wall. When you run into the brick wall, back up, pause, and try to find another opening. So I think utilizing forums like SPP, like ISM, like your own personal network of and suppliers, learn from your suppliers. So don't give up. But after a while, like anything, if your company, and I honestly have a hard time, like Thomas said, really envisioning a world where companies will not have to get in this game. I don't think that is going to happen. I think most companies will end up doing something. And, try your best. And then if it's something that is so important to you, just know there are many companies that have already embraced this. So if it doesn't work over time, then go find yourself another job. And I'm sure that all the companies that are on here and many, many others would love having a passionate, very smart procurement professional in their midst who already get this. But give it a try first.
Excellent. A really good point, though. Martha.
But, find an in somewhere, right? Find a person to partner with who is also passionate about this, whether it's someone in corporate communications, and then do some sort of project with them that they can use to articulate externally, or find someone in supply chain who's passionate about this, or manufacturing, partner with them, find someone in commercial who maybe sees value in selling some element of sustainability to their customer, right? You've got to build some advocates. So, find the right avenue. And like Lisa said, keep trying and start small, start close to home, start with what you can control and collaborate, and it'll hopefully snowball.
Yeah, too right. Find some allies. There are plenty of allies. There's 6,000 of them involved today. So there's definitely some allies out there. Great points. Bertrand, Thomas?
Well, I would like also maybe make sure that today we do not give the impression that we know everything and we're very, very advanced. I mean, I remember my day one where I had no idea at all about sustainability. And thanks God, I met also people like Martha and Thomas on the journey of TFS, where I have learned from them. And then with them, my white page become less white. And also facing every day new white pages. The famous Scope 3 has been a big white pages to me. But then realizing it is important and starting to find a way, as Martha said, right and left, there is a solution. Someone has a piece of the answer, find it. So yes, Lisa, it's correct. Never give up. Be very curious and take responsibility. I personally call it now responsible leadership. Stand up. And if we have that attitude to stand up, there is a solution on the way. Find it. Plenty of people, plenty of communities. Together we can make it.
Thomas, follow that.
Oh, how? The only thing that comes to my mind is this wonderful African saying that if you want to move fast, you go alone. If you want to move far, you go together. And I think what we are up for is a very long journey, and we got to be together on this one. So join us and invite your friends, find some people who have done it, who have experienced it. That would be my, it's a long journey and we do it together.
Brilliant. So if I was to summarize all of you, it's find allies that you can work with, whether they're internal or peers. Find different routes if you run into those brick walls, because definition of insanity is trying something several times and ultimately not changing it if you don't work. I'm sure I butchered that quote quite dramatically there, but you know what I mean. Be willing to learn and adapt. We do not know everything, do we, Bertrand? I think that's absolutely clear, particularly on issues like Scope 3. No one knows really what they're doing on that, and we're still learning, and you've got to be willing to learn. And as you said, I think we've got to we've got to never give up. And if you can't find it after doing all of that, then perhaps you need to find an employer who does get it, because that is really, I think, that market will decide who wins and loses in this place. And there are clearly procurement leaders out there who will support you and will encourage you. So yeah, heed their advice. I think we're going to call it a chop there. So thank you so much, guys. It was all brilliant. Martha, you were fine in the end. We got your gold dust in the end. That was absolutely fine. Don't worry about that at all. And just a huge thanks, both ladies and gentlemen, for being part of this. And we're only halfway through, it feels, World Sustainable Procurement Day, but we've already achieved so much. And you're an inspiration. Thank you so much. And as I said, I'm sure if you wouldn't mind, we'll pick up a lot of questions after this in the coming months. And thank you so much for your leadership. Really appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Good luck
everybody.
See you
with
again
the
soon.
program.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Take care.
Bye-bye.